The sleek human starship Endeavour sliced through the inky void of space, its metallic hull reflecting the distant glow of a binary star system. Inside, Commander Jace Sullivan sat at the helm, his steely gaze fixed on the viewscreen as the alien world of Zelos Prime loomed ahead. Exiting hyperdrive in 3, 2, 1, the ship's AI announced. The stars snapped back into pinpoints as the ship decelerated. Jace tensed, his hand hovering over the weapon's controls. Humanity's first contact with the Zelosians a decade ago had been peaceful, but relations had deteriorated since then. As the first human delegate to visit the Zelosian homeworld, he wasn't sure what kind of reception awaited him. He hoped for diplomacy, but was prepared for hostility. The planet's surface filled the viewscreen, revealing sprawling cities of twisted metallic spires and strange reddish vegetation. A hailing frequency chimed, and a reptilian face appeared. A Zelosian, its scales glinting a burnished copper. Human vessel, you are cleared to land at the following coordinates. Deviate from your designated flight path, and you will be fired upon. The transmission cut off abruptly. Charming, Jace muttered. Take us in, but keep shields up and weapons hot, just in case. He unstrapped himself from the command chair, his muscular frame unfolding to its full 6'2" height. Years of military service had honed his body into a weapon, one he hoped he wouldn't need to use on this mission. The Endeavour pierced the planet's atmosphere, the landscape below a blur of crimson jungle broken by gleaming cities. It touched down at a colossal spaceport teeming with strange ships. An honor guard of heavily armed Zelosians waited as Jace disembarked, towering over him at nearly 8 feet, their uniforms a shimmer of metal scales. I'm Commander Sullivan, Jace said, fighting the urge to reach for his sidearm as the guards pointed jagged spears at him. I'm here on a diplomatic mission, by invitation of your High Council. The largest guard stepped forward, its spear lowering fractionally. You will come with us, human. Its voice was a sibilant hiss. The High Counselor awaits. But first, a demonstration. Jace tensed as the guards marched him not into the city, but towards a massive Colosseum-like structure at distant from the spaceport. The alien architecture was all jagged edges and harsh angles, like the Zelosians themselves. The air grew thick with a cacophony of roaring cheers and alien screams as they neared an arched entrance. What is this place? Jace asked. The guard's lipless mouth twitched, baring dagger-like teeth. You'll see soon enough, human. All new arrivals to Zelos Prime must bear witness to the pit. Prepare to see the true might of the Zelosian Empire. The archway opened into a tunnel sloping down into gloom, the air heavy with the sense of blood and fear. Emerging into the light, Jace found himself in a viewing box, hewn from blood-red stone, overlooking a vast sandy pit, ringed by tiered seats packed with roaring Zelosians. In the pit below, a dozen beings of various alien species fought savagely, a whirlwind of claws, fangs, and strange weapons. And towering over it all, roaring in triumph, was a gargantuan creature, vaguely humanoid, powerfully muscled, nearly 9 feet tall. Its hide was a riot of scars, and its eyes were molten silver, gleaming with murderous rage. 4 arms, each bearing a vicious blade, whirled in a dance of death as the being tore through its opponents. Jace felt his blood run cold as those terrifying eyes turned upwards, seeming to meet his own. What was this nightmare he'd walked into? Behold, the Zelosian guard rasped. Zora Kell, undefeated champion of the pit, scourge of a dozen worlds. All tremble before the might of the Zelosian Empire and its chosen warriors. Jace's jaw clenched, an icy dread settling in his gut as he looked from the guard's fanatical eyes to the horrific scene below. This diplomatic mission had just taken a very dark turn. Jace fought to keep his expression neutral as the guards led him away from the viewing box, the roars of the crowd and the screams of the dying fading behind them. His mind raced, trying to process the brutality he'd just witnessed. What kind of civilization glorified such savagery? They emerged into an opulent chamber where a wizened Zolosian in elaborate robes awaited, the High Counselor. Jace drew himself up, determined to complete his mission despite the barbarism he'd seen. "High Counselor," he began, "I come on behalf of the United Earth government to discuss the trade disputes along our border worlds. Surely we can find a diplomatic solace." "You humans," the High Counselor cut him off, its voice a dry rasp, "always prattling about diplomacy. Here on Zelos Prime, we have a different way." Its eyes glinted cruelly. "You want our respect, Earth Clan. You must earn it." In the pit, Jace's blood ran cold. "You can't be serious. I'm a diplomat, not a gladiator." "Then your mission is futile. As are you," the High Counselor said dismissively. "Guards, return this human to its ship. We have nothing further to discuss." Jace's mind spun, seeking a solution. To leave now would be to fail his mission, to abandon any hope of peace. He made a decision, possibly his last. "Wait," he said, the words leaden on his tongue. "I accept your challenge." The High Counselor's eyes widened fractionally, then narrowed in cruel amusement. "Boldly spoken, human. You have 1 hour to prepare. Then you will face our champion." As the guards led Jace away to a preparation chamber, he tried to steady his racing heart. What had he gotten himself into? He was a skilled fighter, but against a monster like Zorakel, it was suicide. But backing out now would shame himself and humanity. The hour passed in a blur as Jace was outfitted with unfamiliar armor and a selection of vicious-looking weapons. He chose a long, curved blade, similar to the katanas of ancient Earth. It was well-balanced but felt flimsy against the memory of Zorakel's massive blades. All too soon, he was shoved out into the glaring sun of the arena pit, the sand already stained with blood. The roar of the crowd was deafening. The Zolosians worked into a frenzy. And there, emerging from the opposite tunnel, was Zorakel. Up close, the alien gladiator was even more terrifying. Its 4 arms bulging with slabs of scar-tissued muscle, each fist clenching a serrated blade as long as Jace was tall. Its molten eyes fixed on Jace with a look of pure, murderous hatred. "Zorakel." The High Counselor's voice boomed out over the din. "This human has challenged your supremacy. Teach it the folly of its arrogance." The Colossus roared, the sound vibrating Jace's bones, and charged. Jace barely had time to bring his blade up before those 4 swords slammed down, the impact jarring his arms and driving him to his knees. He rolled desperately as the blade struck again, spraying sand. Jace scrambled to his feet, mind racing. He couldn't match Zorakel's strength. He'd have to rely on speed and agility. He ducked and wove as the behemoth swung again and again, the whoosh of displaced air ruffling his hair as the blades narrowly missed. In a flash of insight, Jace realized the 4-armed style left openings, brief moments when all the limbs were extended. He feinted left, then dove right as the swords whistled down, sliding past Zorakel's guard to score a slash along its ribs. The creature bellowed more in rage than pain, lashing out with blinding speed. Jace parried frantically but was knocked sprawling, his blade skittering away. Zorakel loomed over him, 4 blades poised for the killing blow. The Zolosian crowd howled in bloodthirsty glee. In that frozen moment, Jace's eyes met Zorakel's, and saw something unexpected. Behind the rage, there was pain, and deeper still, the tiniest flicker of hope, quickly extinguished. In a flash, Jace understood. This wasn't a monster, but a slave, a being forced to fight and kill for the amusement of its cruel masters. In that instant of recognition, he made a choice. "Zorakel," Jace shouted, his voice ringing out over the crowd's roar. "I am not your enemy." The gladiator hesitated, blades hovering. "You have a choice." Jace pressed on. "You don't have to be their pawn, their plaything. Help me, and I swear I'll do everything in my power to free you." For a long, tense moment, the two stared at each other, human and alien, slave and free. The crowd noise faded to a confused murmur. Then slowly, incredibly, Zora Kell lowered its blades. The murmur turned to shouts of confusion and outrage. Ignoring them, the Gladiator extended a hand, hauling Jace to his feet with astonishing strength. "Now what, human?" Zora Kell growled in a surprisingly eloquent rumble. Jace grinned fiercely, snatching up his blade. Now we fight our way out of this damned pit. And then we show these Zolosian bastards what humans and Kell are really made of." Together, they turned to face the guards now pouring into the arena, weapons drawn, and murder in their eyes. The battle for freedom had only just begun. The arena erupted into chaos as Jace and Zora Kell stood back to back, facing the oncoming horde of Zolosian guards. The crowd's cheers turned to screams of outrage and confusion. "Traitor!" the High Counselor shrieked from its box. "Slay the human and its thrall." But Jace and Zora Kell were already moving. The human ducked and wove, his blade a silver blur, while the towering Gladiator swept its 4 swords in great arcs, felling Zolosians like wheat before a scythe. The sand grew slick with green blood. "We need to get to my ship," Jace shouted over the din of battle. "Can you clear a path?" Zora Kell's answering roar was deafening. The giant alien surged forward, its blades whirling. Zolosians falling before it like leaves in a gale. Jace followed close behind, guarding the Gladiator's back, his own sword darting out to dispatch any who slipped past Zora Kell's deadly reach. They fought their way up the stands, the crowd scattering before them. Zora Kell's molten eyes burned with a new light, the fierceness of hope, of a long-awaited chance at freedom. At the top of the stands, they were met by a phalanx of guards, weapons bristling. For a moment, it seemed their charge would be halted. But Zora Kell let out a bellow of rage and barreled forward, scattering the guards like ninepins. Jace couldn't help but cheer as he raced after the juggernaut. They burst out of the arena into the harsh sunlight, alarms blaring across the city. Jace's heart sank as he saw the spaceport in the distance, swarming with Zolosian soldiers. Between them and freedom stood an entire city of hostile aliens. But Zora Kell was undaunted. "This way." The Gladiator growled, veering into a side street. "I know these ways like my own scars." Jace followed without hesitation, marveling at his strange ally's knowledge. They plunged into a warren of twisting alleys, the shouts of their pursuers echoing behind them. Whenever soldiers blocked their path, Zora Kell charged forward with unstoppable fury, while Jace darted in to strike at exposed flanks. They fought in perfect tandem, as if they'd been partnered for years rather than minutes. As they ran and fought, Jace caught glimpses of the city, the squalid slums where the non-Zolosian underclass eked out a living, the opulent palaces of the elite, the factories belching noxious smoke. He saw a civilization built on subjugation and cruelty, and his resolve hardened. He would not only free Zora Kell, but expose the Zolosians' brutality to the galaxy. At last, they broke out of the city, the spaceport ahead, but their way was blocked by a massive force of Zolosian troops and war machines, the High Counselor at their head. "Surrender, mammals," it screeched. "You cannot hope to defy the might of the Zolosian Empire." Jace and Zora Kell exchanged a glance. They were exhausted, battered, bleeding from a dozen wounds. The odds seemed insurmountable. But in that moment, a great rumble shook the earth. From the jungle beyond the city, a host of massive shapes emerged, towering beings, each as large as Zora Kell, their hides a riot of scars, their eyes burning with the same fierce light. "My people," Zora Kell roared in joy. The Kell charged forward, a tsunami of rage and retribution, smashing into the Zolosian lines like a hammer blow. The Zolosians screamed as they were overrun, their weapons useless against the onslaught. In the chaos, Jace and Zora Kell sprinted for the Endeavor. They leaped aboard as the ship's engines roared to life, blasting off even as Zolosian ships scrambled in pursuit. In the cockpit, Jace collapsed into the pilot's seat, his whole body shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. Zora Kell loomed over him, its presence filling the small space. "You came back," Jace panted. "You and your people. Why?" The Gladiator was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, it placed a massive hand on Jace's shoulder, the touch surprisingly gentle. "You gave me hope, human," Zora Kell rumbled. "You, a soft, small thing. You saw me as more than a beast, more than a slave. And in your courage, I saw a chance for my people, a chance to be free." Jace felt a lump in his throat. He clasped the giant hand on his shoulder, feeling the warmth, the strength, the shared humanity. "Where will you go now?" he asked. Zora Kell's molten eyes gleamed. "We will find a new home, a place to be free. And you, Jace Sullivan, what will you do?" Jace grinned fiercely as the stars blurred into the streaks of hyperdrive. "Me? I've got a report to file. The galaxy needs to know the truth about the Zolosians. And after that," he shrugged, "well, the universe is a big place. I'm sure there are more wrongs to right, more friends to make. Perhaps we'll meet again out there, Zora Kell." The Gladiator threw back its head and laughed, a sound like rolling thunder. "Perhaps we will, my small friend. Until then, fly well and fight true. And remember, you will always have an ally in the Kell." As the Endeavor shot into the void, Jace felt a new sense of purpose, of destiny. His mission had changed. No longer was he just a diplomat. He was a warrior for justice, a champion of the oppressed. And out there in the vast expanse of space, he knew there were more battles to be won, more friends to be made, more stories waiting to be written in the stars. The Endeavor streaked through hyperspace, its engines humming a steady song of defiance. In the ship's small medbay, Jace winced as the automedic sutured a particularly deep gash on his forearm, courtesy of a Zolosian guard's blade. Beside him, Zora Kell sat hunched on the floor, the medbay's cot far too small for the giant alien's frame. The Kell was similarly battered but seemed to wear its wounds like badges of honor, the fresh scars just more stories written on its hide. "You fight well for a diplomat," Zora Kell rumbled, its voice filling the small space. "Where did you learn such skill?" Jace shrugged, flexing his freshly healed arm. "I wasn't always a diplomat. Served a decade in Earth's military before I joined the diplomatic corps. Guess the old instincts never really fade." The Kell nodded, respect gleaming in its molten eyes. "A warrior's spirit. I saw it in you in the arena. It's what made me believe your words." Jace met that fierce gaze, seeing the intelligence, the depth of emotion behind it. "What will you and your people do now? The Zolosians won't just let you go." Zora Kell growled, a sound like distant thunder. "Let them come. The Kell have tasted freedom now. We will not return to chains. We will find a world to call our own, far from the Empire's reach." Jace nodded, a fierce grin tugging at his lips. "Give them hell for me." A chime sounded, and the ship's eye spoke. "Commander Sullivan, we are approaching the coordinates you provided. Preparing to drop out of hyperspace." Jace stood, squaring his shoulders. Time to face the music. The Endeavor decelerated, the starfield snapping back into focus. Ahead loomed a massive space station, its structure a delicate filigree of interlocking rings and spires, the Galactic Council, the heart of interstellar diplomacy. As the ship docked and the airlock cycled open, Jace was unsurprised to find an armed escort waiting, their postures wary. His unscheduled return and strange passenger had clearly raised alarms. With Zora Kell at his side, Jace allowed himself to be led through the station's gleaming corridors, ignoring the startled looks and frightened whispers their passage elicited. The escort brought them to a grand chamber where a dozen beings of various species sat arrayed in a semicircle, their expressions ranging from curious to alarmed to outright hostile. At the center sat a statuesque woman with luminous blue skin and eyes like chips of ice, Counselor Zara Wren, humanity's representative. Her gaze was stern as Jace and Zora Kell were led to stand before the council. "Commander Sullivan," she began, her voice ringing in the hush, "you have much to explain. Your mission to Zelos Prime has caused quite a stir. The Zelosian ambassador is demanding your immediate extradition to face charges of fomenting rebellion and aiding fugitives." Angry mutters broke out among the council. Jace held up a hand for silence. "Counselors," he said, his voice steady, "I went to Zelos Prime as an emissary of peace. What I found was a regime built on slavery, cruelty, and blood sport. The Zelosians' wealth and power are bought with the suffering of sentient beings." He gestured to Zora Kell. "This is Zora Kell, a champion gladiator of the Zelosian arena pits. I watched as it and others were forced to fight and die for the amusement of their masters. Is this the kind of ally the Council wants? Is this what we stand for?" Zara Wren's eyes narrowed. "These are serious allegations, Commander. What proof do you have?" In answer, Jace held up a data crystal. "My ship's logs, recorded during my time on Zelos Prime. Witness accounts from those I spoke to in the pits. And most damning of all, the Zelosians' own records, hacked from their computer core during our escape." He tossed the crystal to Zara Wren, who caught it deftly. "All the proof you need is there, Counselor. The Zelosians' crimes laid bare." As Zara Wren slotted the crystal into a reader, the chamber erupted into chaos. Zelosian and human delegates shouted accusations and counter-accusations, while other species representatives clamored for a chance to view the evidence. Through it all, Zora Kell stood impassive, a mountain unmoved by the storm. But Jace saw the hope burning in those molten eyes, the desperate dream of freedom so close to realization. Finally, Zara Wren held up a hand for silence. The room stilled, every eye upon her. "The evidence is clear," she said, her voice heavy with gravity. "The Zelosian Empire has committed grave crimes against sentience. Slavery, torture, forced combat. These are anathema to every principle the Galactic Council holds dear." She turned to face the Zelosian delegation, her gaze icy. "You will withdraw from this council immediately. All trade agreements and treaties with the Zelosian Empire are hereby null and void. You will face sanctions and embargo until such time as you abolish your cruel practices and make restitution to those you have wronged." The Zelosian ambassador sputtered in outrage, but wilted under the combined glares of the other counselors. With a final hiss of anger, the Zelosian delegation stormed from the chamber. In the ringing silence that followed, Zara Wren turned to Jace and Zora Kell. "Commander Sullivan, Zora Kell, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you for bringing this matter to light. You have done a great service for justice and freedom." Jace bowed, exhaustion and relief warring within him. "Thank you, Counselor. But the true credit goes to Zora Kell and its people. They're the ones who fought and suffered under Zelosian rule." Zora Kell stepped forward, its massive frame drawing every eye. "My people seek only a home," it rumbled. "A place to live in peace, free from oppression." Zara Wren nodded. "The Council will do all in its power to aid you in this. You have our support and our gratitude." As the Council session broke up into smaller animated discussions, Jace turned to Zora Kell, a grin spreading across his face. "Well, that's one way to make an impression on the galactic stage." The Kell's laughter was a deep boom. "You have a gift for understatement, my friend. This day will be long remembered among my people. The day we won our freedom, thanks to a small but fierce human." Jace clasped the giant hand. "I only lit the spark. You and your people are the ones who will make it burn." Together, they looked out the great viewports of the council chamber, to the stars glittering beyond, a galaxy full of possibilities of new beginnings. For Jace, it was a reaffirmation of his purpose. He had set out to be a peacemaker, but he had found a new calling, a warrior for justice, a champion of the oppressed. And for Zora Kell and the Kell, it was a future bright with promise. A chance to build a new life, a new world, free from the chains of the past. They had fought hard for this moment, shed blood and tears. But as they stood there, human and Kell, two unlikely friends united by a shared dream, they knew it had been worth it. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was a good thing. The sun rose over a verdant world, its golden rays casting a warm glow over rolling hills and dense forests. In a clearing stood a small settlement, its structures a blend of human and Kell design. At its heart, a tall figure stood, watching the sunrise with molten eyes. Zora Kell, leader of the Free Kell, breathed deep the air of their new home. It had been a long and difficult journey, but at last, they had found a place to call their own. The sound of an approaching ship drew Zora Kell's gaze upward. A smile split the Kell's craggy face as it recognized the sleek lines of the Endeavor. The ship set down at the edge of the settlement, and a familiar figure emerged. Jace Sullivan, hero of the Kell and now a celebrated figure across the galaxy, strode forward, his grin wide and genuine. Zora Kell moved to meet him, their clasped hands a symbol of the bond they'd forged through fire and blood. "Look at you," Jace marveled, taking in the settlement, the air of peace and purpose that surrounded the Kell. "You've built something incredible here." Zora Kell inclined its head. "We have you to thank for it, my friend. Without your courage, we would still be slaves." Jace shook his head. "I only opened the door. You and your people walked through it. This," he gestured to the settlement, "this is all you're doing." They walked together through the village, Kell of all ages pausing in their tasks to wave and call out greetings. Children, born free, played in the streets, their laughter a music Zora Kell had never thought to hear. "And what of you, Jace Sullivan?" Zora Kell asked as they walked. "How fares the galaxy's most famous troublemaker?" Jace laughed. "I've been busy. After the Zolosian Empire fell, a lot of other oppressive regimes started getting nervous. They knew they could be next. Some have tried to clean up their act. Others," his grin turned fierce, "others have learned why it's not wise to test the Council's resolve. Or mine." Zora Kell nodded, pride shining in its eyes. "You've become a symbol, my friend. A beacon of hope for the oppressed and a warning to oppressors." Jace shrugged, looking slightly uncomfortable with the praise. "I'm just doing what I believe in, what we fought for. A galaxy where everyone, regardless of species, can live free and in peace." They came to a stop at a large structure, its doors adorned with the symbol of the Free Kell, a broken chain. Inside, Kell warriors trained, their movements fluid and deadly. But instead of the desperate savagery Jace had seen in the Zolosian pits, these warriors carried themselves with discipline and honor. "We remember the lessons of our past," Zora Kell said, seeing Jace's gaze. "We train to protect, not to conquer. Never again will we allow ourselves to be enslaved. But neither will we become the monsters our enslavers were." Jace laid a hand on Zora Kell's arm, his touch a gesture of respect and affection. "The galaxy could learn a lot from you and your people, my friend." As the day passed, Jace and Zora Kell talked of many things. Of the challenges the Kell faced in building a new society, of the political intrigues Jace navigated in his role as a galactic peacekeeper, and of the deep friendship that had grown between them, forged in the crucible of conflict and tempered by shared ideals. As evening fell and Jace prepared to depart, Zora Kell clasped his shoulder. "You will always have a home here, Jace Sullivan. You are Kell in spirit, if not in form." Jace returned the clasp, his eyes bright. "And you and your people will always have an ally in me and in the Council. Call, and we will come." The Endeavor lifted off, its engines painting the twilight sky in streaks of blue and gold. Zora Kell watched until it vanished from sight, then turned back to the settlement, to the life they were building. There would be challenges ahead, Zora Kell knew. Building a new society was never easy. There would be disagreements, growing pains, external threats, but they would face them as they had faced the Zolosian pits, with courage, with determination, and with the unbreakable bonds of fellowship. And always they would remember the lesson J. Sullivan had taught them, that hope could bloom even in the darkest of places, that a single spark could ignite the fires of change. The Kell had been slaves, and then gladiators, and then fugitives. Now, at last, they were something new, something of their own making. They were free, and in that freedom they would find their destiny. The sun set over the Kell settlement, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, and as the stars emerged, one by one, Zora Kell knew each was a promise, a possibility waiting to be grasped. A new dawn was coming, and the Kell would greet it with open arms and unbound hearts, ready to write their story among the stars. The end.